Okay, so get this. We're diving into a real Cold War thriller.
A thriller.
Yeah, think sunken Soviet submarine,
Okay.
nuclear secrets on the ocean floor,
Oh, wow.
and a super secret CIA mission to get it all back.
Sounds intense.
This is Project Azorian.
I've heard of that.
And we've got this declassified CIA document that's going to tell us the whole story.
You mean like how it all went down?
Exactly. It's like having a backstage pass to one of the biggest intelligence operations ever.
And we get to see what really happened.
Yeah, the stuff they don't put in the history books.
The real deal.
The real deal. So
Okay, let's do it.
let's break this thing down. Who, what, when, where, why, the whole 9 yards.
I'm ready.
All right, so picture this March 1968.
Cold War.
Cold War at its peak. Tensions are high. And suddenly a Soviet Gulf II class ballistic missile submarine.
Those carried nukes, right?
You got it. The K-129 sinks in the Pacific.
It disappears.
Gone without a trace. And it wasn't just any sub.
Mm-hmm.
This thing was packing nuclear missiles, a huge blow to the Soviets.
I bet, and a huge opportunity for the U.S.
Oh, yeah. You can imagine the intelligence they could get their hands on.
Soviet nuclear warheads, missile tech, their playbook,
It
everything.
was a gold mine just sitting there at the bottom of the ocean.
No wonder they wanted to recover it no matter the cost.
Speaking of cost, this thing sank in the middle of the Pacific, over 16,000 feet down.
Deeper than Everest is tall?
That's insane. Yeah, talk about a challenge just getting down there as a feat, let alone bringing a whole submarine back up.
So how did they even begin to plan for this?
Well, so this document shows there was a lot of debate within the U.S. government.
Really?
Some officials were all gung-ho about it, saw it as a game changer.
Right.
But others were more cautious, worried about the feasibility, the cost, the risks.
I can see both sides.
Yeah, it was a tough call. But they knew they needed a plan.
So what did they do?
They assembled a team of the best and brightest, a real think tank.
The CIA's finest.
Exactly. To figure out how to raise this sunken sub from the depths.
Like a deep-sea salvage team on steroids?
Pretty much. And they explored a few different options.
Like what?
Well, one was the brute force approach. Just lift the entire sub with sheer power.
Just yank it up.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
Then there was the idea of manipulating the sub's ballast to use buoyancy to bring it up.
So kind of like making it float up on its own.
Exactly. And then they even considered generating buoyancy at depth.
Underwater levitation.
Sounds crazy, Reese.
That's pretty wild.
I know these guys were thinking way outside the box.
So which one did they choose?
They ended up going with brute force.
Really?
Yeah, they decided to build this massive surface ship equipped with a gigantic claw specifically for grabbing and lifting the submarine.
So like an underwater crane?
Exactly, but on a scale never seen before.
That's incredible. I can't even imagine the engineering involved.
It was a huge undertaking, and all of this had to be done in total secrecy.
Of course this was the Cold War.
They couldn't let the Soviets catch wind of what they were up to.
So how did they keep it under wraps?
They gave the operation a code name Azorian and came up with a clever cover story.
The cover story.
They pretended it was a deep-sea mining venture.
The mining venture.
Yep, they went all out.
What do you mean?
They built this special-purpose ship called the Hughes Glomar Explorer, or HGE for short.
HGE.
To the outside world, it looked like a state-of-the-art mining vessel with a massive claw for scooping up valuable minerals from the seabed.
So they were hiding in plain sight.
Exactly. It was all about plausible deniability. Even within the project itself, information was compartmentalized.
Like need-to-know basis.
Exactly. And they used coded messages to keep things under wraps.
They really went all out on the secrecy.
They had to. This was high-stakes stuff.
So they've got this incredible ship, this elaborate cover story, and a top-secret mission. What happens next?
Well, that's where the real adventure begins.
All right, I'm ready for it.
Let's dive into the HGE's incredible journey.
Let's do it. This HGE's journey, that's a whole story on its own.
Oh, yeah?
They built it in Pennsylvania,
Okay.
launched it in San Diego,
Makes sense.
then trials, modifications on the East Coast.
He's getting it ready.
Right. And then finally the big one, a trans-Pacific voyage to the recovery site.
So this massive ship just sailing across the ocean pretending to be a mining operation.
Exactly, trying to blend in.
I bet there were some close calls along the way.
You know, there were actually.
Really?
Like, what? The document mentions times they had to go under bridges.
Oh, no.
Barely any clearance.
Talk about stressful.
And then rough sea storms, you know.
Of course.
But they had to keep up the act the whole time.
Couldn't blow their cover.
Nope. Not even for a second.
I can't even imagine the pressure.
And on top of all that, they had technical problems.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Equipment malfunctions, delays, you name it.
That's not surprising, I guess, for a project this big.
And then there were the cost overruns.
Always a problem.
It was a constant battle to keep everything on track.
Sounds like it. So after this epic journey, they finally make it to the recovery site?
They do.
But what about the Soviets?
Ah, good question.
They couldn't have been completely oblivious, right?
Well, they were keeping an eye on things.
I bet they were.
The document says Soviet ships and even a helicopter were watching the HGE.
Really?
Yeah, they were definitely suspicious.
I can't say I blame them.
So the recovery team, they're trying to pull off this incredible feat.
Right, with the Soviets practically breathing down their necks.
It must have been incredibly tense.
So how did they even attempt the recovery itself?
Okay, so picture that massive claw.
The one we talked about?
Yep, that was the key.
How so?
They had to use it to reach down thousands of feet, grab onto the K-129 and lift it up.
Carefully, I'm assuming.
Oh yeah, very carefully.
It sounds incredibly difficult.
They had to deal with equipment malfunctions, bad weather,
Of course.
and always the risk of the Soviets intervening.
I bet that was a constant worry.
It was a delicate operation with a lot of moving parts.
So after all this, the big question, did they actually recover the submarine?
Well, here's where the document gets a little vague.
What do you mean?
It doesn't explicitly say they recovered the whole thing, but it does suggest they got at least part of it.
So they got something.
Yeah, maybe some of the most important parts.
Like the nuclear secrets?
Potentially, we don't know for sure.
Still, even a partial recovery would have been a huge win for the U.S.
Oh, absolutely. A major intelligence coup.
And a major embarrassment for the Soviets.
Yeah, you can imagine they weren't too happy about it.
I bet not.
Mm.
But for years, nobody knew any of this was happening.
Hughes' top secret.
When did the world finally find out about Project Azorian?
That's a story in itself. Well, it took a while, actually.
How long are we talking?
It wasn't until 1975.
So like 7 years later.
Yeah, there was a media leak, and then
Oh, so they had to come clean?
pretty much President Ford officially acknowledged the project.
Wow, so this super secret mission suddenly became front page news.
You got it. People were shocked, I bet.
I can only imagine talk about a bombshell revelation
This wasn't just some spy story. It was like a real-life thriller.
with giant robots and underwater chases.
Exactly. It captured everyone's imagination and still does to this day.
Speaking of giant robots, whatever happened to the Hughes Glomar Explorer?
The HGE.
Yeah, did it just go back to pretending to be a mining ship?
Well, the cover was blown, so
Yeah.
no more mining charade.
So what did they do with it?
It actually went on to do other deep-sea stuff.
Really?
Yeah, not as dramatic as Project Azorian, though.
I guess that's a tough act to follow.
It really is.
But looking back, what's the legacy of Project Azorian?
I think it shows how far governments will go for intelligence.
Like pushing the limits of technology and secrecy.
Exactly. And that debate about national security versus transparency, it's still going on today.
It's a fascinating story. Ambition, ingenuity, risk-taking,
Yeah.
all against the backdrop of the Cold War.
And makes you wonder what other secrets are still out there.
Hidden in the ocean, just waiting to be discovered.
Right, like what else is down there?
It's a tantalizing thought.
It is. Project Azorian reminds us history is full of surprises.
Absolutely. Well, this has been an incredible deep dive.
It has.
We've gone from the depths of the Pacific to the heights of Cold War intrigue.
Quite a journey.
And if you're as fascinated by Project Azorian as we are,
As I'm sure you are.
we encourage you to explore further.
There's a lot more to uncover.
Books, documentaries, even more declassified documents.
It's a rabbit hole worth going down.
So until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.
See you then.